Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, French authorities identify the 3 gunmen who killed 12 people at the Paris headquarters of a French satirical weekly paper. 2 of the 3 remain at large. With global oil prices tumbling to new lows, some financial institutions in and out of Korea forecast the country's consumer price growth this year will hobble along in the 0% range. Plus, Washington's top intelligence chief warns North Korea, fresh from its hack of Sony Pictures, could launch additional cyber attacks against the United States. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's noon Thursday, January 8th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. And we begin with the awful events that unfolded in Paris. And France is in a state of shock in the wake of the worst terrorist attack the country has seen in decades.
A massive manhunt is underway for the gunman behind the mass murder at the office of the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, which had thumbed its nose at radical Islam in the past with cartoons that were designed to be quite controversial.
Yes, 12 are dead and around 10 others are injured, some in critical condition. We're going to connect live to Eunice Kim for the latest on this story, which is an extremely fluid one, of course. Eunice, we understand, in fact, that just within the last hour or so, one of the 3 perpetrators has turned himself in to the police.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. French police are saying that the youngest of the 3 suspects, an 18-year-old identified as Hamid Murad, has surrendered and is in their custody. This news comes to us after heavily armed anti-terror forces scoured a building in Rem Wednesday night, which is 140 kilometers northeast of Paris and where Murad was reportedly residing. Police also have released pictures of the remaining 2 suspects at large. You see there, brothers Said and Sheriff Kouachi, 34 and 32 years old, describing them as armed and dangerous. There are unconfirmed reports that the 2 had returned from Syria this summer and that one of the 2, Said, was part of an Iraqi jihadi network and had spent 3 years in prison on terror charges.
You know, there's still much we don't know at this point, including whether the attackers were part of any jihadist group or they were working on their own. But looking at the operation itself, it appeared to be very organized.
Yeah, you're right, Jin-joo. Indeed, so seamless that one eyewitness told the Associated Press he initially thought they were part of France's anti-terrorism forces. A lot of shock and anger sparked from what is the worst terror strike in Europe since the attacks in London back in 2005. President François Hollande called the massacre at the satirist magazine a strike against the whole of the French Republic.
This shooting of extreme violence killed 12 people and injured several more. Greatly talented cartoonists, courageous journalists are dead. They left their mark on generations and generations of French. Through their influence, through their insolence, through their rare independence. Here, I want to say to them that this message of freedom, we will continue to defend it in their name.
And soon after the noontime shooting, France was put on its highest terror alert. Thursday has been designated a day of mourning for the country. On Wednesday, 2 hooded gunmen armed with AK-47 stormed an editorial meeting at the offices of Charlie Hebdo. They were very methodical and intentional in their movements, reportedly calling out their victims' names before shooting them execution style, starting with the editor-in-chief known as Sharp, as well as other prominent cartoonists who were in that room. Minutes later, the shooters were seen leaving the building to get into a waiting black car after killing 12 people, including 8 journalists and 2 police officers. The magazine, Charlie Hebdo, had been under tight security, especially after its offices were firebombed in 2011, after it issued a cover featuring a caricature of Prophet Muhammad, which is considered blasphemy in many Muslim circles.
And Eunice, people around the world are rallying behind France in its time of need. Some are even calling this France's 9/11.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. People in France are standing up as well, holding up signs that say "Je suis Charlie Hebdo," which means "I am Charlie Hebdo." That phrase trending on Twitter, as well as the rest of the internet. World leaders also reacted within hours, condemning this attack.
This horrific attack is meant to divide. We must not fall into that trap. This is a moment for solidarity around the world. We must stand strong for freedom of expression and tolerance, and stand against the forces of division and hate.
This country stands united with the French people in our opposition to all forms of terrorism, and we stand squarely for free speech and democracy. And these people will never be able to take us off those values.
Candlelight vigils were seen in cities across Europe. Here outside the French embassy in Berlin, hundreds of people came out to show solidarity with the victims and their families. A massive crowd of reportedly 10,000 people spontaneously showed up in central Paris as well at the Place de la République, showing their resolve that they will not back down.
All right, Eunice, thank you for that update.
Sure thing.
Markets across the world are feeling the effects of the recent drop in oil prices. And here in Korea, the finance minister says the economy could end up benefiting, but others are raising concerns of deflation, and financial firms at home and abroad have downgraded their inflation rate forecast for this year. Shin Se-min reports.
There are concerns that spiraling global oil prices could push Korea's annual inflation rate down to its lowest level in 16 years, into the 0% range. Financial firms at home like Samsung Securities and the Korean Development Institute have downgraded their forecast to below 1%. Overseas, Credit Suisse lowered its projection from nearly 3% to 0.9%, citing sinking crude prices. If the rate does in fact fall into the 0% range, it would be the first time since 1999, right after the Asian financial crisis, when consumer price growth dipped to 0.8%. The nation's inflation rate has remained in the 1% range since November 2012. The slide in oil prices has some going so far as to raise the prospects of deflation in Korea, given the low inflation rate and slowing domestic demand. However, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan dismissed those concerns on Wednesday. Instead, he said they could end up benefiting Korea, as the lower import prices of oil would help the country boost domestic demand. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And the Eurozone has been hit hard by falling crude prices. The currency bloc has officially slumped into deflation for the first time in 5 years. According to the year-end estimates released by European Statistics Office on Wednesday, consumer prices across the Eurozone dropped 0.2% in December from a year earlier. Last month's fall was mostly attributed to free-falling oil prices. Brent crude has slipped to roughly $50 a barrel, having plunged more than half since last year's high of $115. Analysts say declining oil prices are expected to increase business and consumer spending, but a long period of tumbling prices can choke the economy and prove difficult to get out of. And sliding oil prices have pushed down international raw material prices as well to a nearly 6-year low. The Commodity Research Bureau Index, which compiles data of 21 staple commodities, including grain, crude, and metal, hit 225.38 points on Tuesday. Now, that's the lowest it's been since April 2009. Compared to the first half of last year, West Texas Intermediate crude has dropped 55%. 9% in value, gold 8%, and copper 12%. Analysts forecast prices to remain low or drop even further, at least through the first half of this year, citing the oversupply of international crude and economic uncertainties in major countries around the globe.
Korea posted stable growth in 2014 in terms of exports and R&D investments, but will Korean companies be able to maintain the momentum and protect themselves from the external risks that could be in store this year? Here's our Song Ji-sun with the outlook.
Korea fared relatively well last year despite slowing global demand and a sluggish economic recovery at home. But the outlook for this year is not all that bright. The machineries and semiconductor industries are expected to enjoy growth this year, backed by steady demand from the U.S. Free trade agreements struck with a dozen countries in recent years have given a boost to the auto parts, and textile sectors. But handset producers will be faced with tough competition in the global market, especially in China, where cheap local manufacturers like Xiaomi and Huawei are quickly gaining ground on Samsung and LG Electronics. Chinese companies are catching up with Korean manufacturers in terms of their technological advances, and their cheap prices and mass production capabilities help their output surpass Korea's, both in the shipbuilding and auto sectors. Considering that half of Korean export items compete with Japanese products on the international stage, the weakening Japanese yen remains a risk for Korean exporters. Industry analysts say companies need to stick to what they're good at while improving their quality and reducing costs.
Companies must give up on sectors that are not performing well and focus their resources and manpower on sectors that are excelling in the market.
In fact, the overhaul has already started. Samsung sold its petrochemical sectors to Hanwha Group last year, while Hyundai Steel acquired Dongbu Special Steel. Such M&As and restructuring will speed up this year. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's Samsung Electronics says it will likely post fourth-quarter profits that beat analysts' estimates thanks to strong demand for memory chips. That said, the smartphone and memory chip maker's likely profit was still down more than 37% compared to last year, confirming Samsung's first annual profit fall in 3 years. Ji Myung-gil has more.
In a guidance released on Thursday, Samsung Electronics said its operating profit will likely be $4.7 billion in the October to December period of 2014, beating expectations. However, profits are down almost 37.5% from a year earlier, confirming its first annual profit decline since 2011. But the fourth-quarter figure still marks a rebound from the company's third-quarter profits of $3.6 billion, which was Samsung's lowest quarterly profit in more than 3 years. Fourth-quarter sales likely fell more than 12% on-year at some $47 billion, but that's up $4.5 billion from the previous quarter. Market analysts say increased demand for memory chips helped limit the impact of shrinking smartphone profits as Samsung's Galaxy line struggles to compete with Apple's iPhone and cheaper Chinese rivals. Analysts presume Samsung's semiconductor division performed better than the cash cow mobile business from October to December period of last year, helped by a rise in demand for memory chips that go into personal computers and smartphones. The mobile division's fourth-quarter profits improved slightly from the previous quarter due to pickup in sales of premium smartphones like the Galaxy Note 4 and efforts to lower marketing costs. Samsung did not provide a breakdown of its divisional profits as the final earning figures are due to be released later this month. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, Korea and Colombia agreed on a free trade deal nearly 2 years ago now, but the pact has yet to be ratified in Colombia, and this is due mostly to the country's auto industry, which has a deep opposition to the deal. Colombia's foreign minister was in Seoul this week, and she was here to assure officials in Seoul that the deal will be finalized soon. Connie Kim has more.
Korea will soon have greater access to Colombia, the third largest Latin American market, and its population of 48 million. Wrapping up her two-day visit to Seoul on Wednesday, Colombian Foreign Minister Maria Angela Olguin met with Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and pledged to speed up ratification of the Korea-Colombia FTA that was signed nearly 2 years ago.
I am happy to say that our Congress approved the trade pact. Once the deal is reviewed by the Constitutional Court, the free trade agreement could be ratified in the coming months.
The holdup is mostly on the Colombian side amid concerns among the auto industry there as a tariff on Korean automobiles will be lifted over a 10-year period. Although the current rate stands at 35%, there is still strong demand for Korean automobiles in Colombia. Of total bilateral trade in 2013, exports of Korean cars and auto parts to Colombia made up more than 80%. Olguin said the concerns within Colombia are manageable, considering that Korean automobiles that come into the country via the U.S. or Mexico come in tariff-free.
Given this situation, I believe the problem related to the auto industry's backlash can be solved.
She added that subsidiaries would be given out to the auto sector to ease concerns. Now, when the bilateral trade pact goes into effect, the Korean market will have cheaper access to Colombia's most popular export items, such as coffee, coal, and metals. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea and Japan are going to hold economic talks in Seoul later on this Thursday afternoon. Seoul's Deputy Minister for Economic Affairs, An Chung-gi, and his Japanese counterpart, Yasumasa Nagamine, will talk over ways to strengthen economic cooperation in this, the 50th year since diplomatic ties were established between the two countries. Korea is expected to raise its concerns about Japan's quantitative easing and the effects of the weak Japanese yen within global markets. The proposed trilateral free trade agreement between Korea, Japan and China will also be high on the agenda. On Japan's end, they are likely to ask that Korea resume imports of fishery goods, which were suspended naturally in 2013 following the Fukushima nuclear disaster and all the radiation that came out of that. And these are the second high-level economic talks between the two sides since President Park Geun-hye took office nearly 2 years ago.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, and Thursday that LG Electronics.
The South Korean parliament is one step closer to passing a resolution that urges Seoul and Pyongyang to mutually refrain from verbally attacking each other. The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee voted in favor of the resolution this Tuesday morning that calls for an end to slander between the two Koreas. It also urges the government to take action against South Korean civic groups that fly anti-North Korea leaflets across the border if it harms inter-Korean relations. Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae, who attended the session, said the government would take necessary measures if the safety of people near the border region were threatened. The bill will go up for a full vote at the National Assembly on Monday. The top man at the FBI says he's more confident than ever that North Korea was responsible for the hack attack on Sony Pictures. And adding to that, Washington's top intelligence chief warned Pyongyang could launch additional cyber attacks against the United States. Kwon So-ah has the story.
There's no doubt. The FBI seems more confident than ever that North Korea was behind the recent hacking of Sony Pictures. That's what James Comey, the bureau's director, said Wednesday during a speech at a cybersecurity conference in New York.
Right, why do I have such high confidence in this attribution to North Korea? Now, here's the tricky part. I want to show you as much as I can, the American people, about the why, and I want to show the bad guys as little as possible about the how.
But while stressing the Bureau has to preserve its methods and sources, he did give some explanation on why the FBI is certain. When the hackers sent emails, they would use proxy servers for disguise, but at times they got, quote, sloppy and were directly connected. That's when the FBI caught IP addresses only used by North Koreans. And on the same day at the same location, James Clapper, Washington's top intelligence chief, warned there's a high probability North Korea will launch more cyber attacks on the United States, calling the recent hacking the most serious attack of its kind against U.S. interests, resulting in huge financial losses. He added the cyber world is a powerful new realm for Pyongyang.
If they get global recognition at a low cost with no consequence, they will do it again and keep doing it again until we push back. And of course, others will follow suit.
Clapper went on to say that if nothing is done to punish North Korea, the regime will continue to lash out. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
North Korea, meanwhile, has called on the U.S. government to lift recently applied sanctions on the country, again denying it had anything to do with the hacking attack on Sony Pictures. Pyongyang's demand comes roughly a week after U.S. President Barack Obama signed an executive order authorizing sanctions against 3 North Korean entities and 10 officials, on top of those imposed on the North for its past nuclear tests and missile launches. The North's National Defense Commission says the latest sanctions are hostile and repugnant, as they were imposed with no solid evidence linking the North to the hacking. The commission said Washington should remove the punitive measures right away or face the threat of a military response.
Part of the tail of the crashed AirAsia Flight 8501 has been found in the Java Sea. Indonesian searchers say it was found in a secondary search area, and this lends weight to theories that strong currents may have moved the debris. The head of the search team says the tail was spotted by teams involving divers and unmanned underwater vehicles. Now, it is buried in mud and it's under about 30 meters of water and is also believed to be upside down. Now, finding the tail is a significant development as it houses the black boxes. These are the voice and flight data recorders, which could give investigators some much-needed clues as to what caused this crash. 40 bodies have been recovered so far, but the authorities believe many of the 122 other people that were on board may still be strapped inside the main body of the plane. This plane was lost en route from Indonesia to Singapore on December 28th. Now, Samsung Electronics is grabbing the world's attention at the ongoing Consumer Electronics Show with its Internet of Things technologies. US-based magazine Bloomberg Businessweek says Samsung's pledge to connect most of its product to the web within 2 years is one of the most important things to watch out for at this Las Vegas extravaganza. The report says the campaign fits Samsung well, as it already makes sophisticated electronic devices and household appliances on an international global scale. It, however, added that it may take Samsung longer than the envisioned 2 years for the plan to become reality and for consumers to fully embrace internet-enabled home appliances.
Well, there will be nothing but sunshine thanks to a high-pressure front, but don't be fooled as it's still very cold outside. A cold snap is in full swing. Burly cold condition will continue to blast the entire nation, though this afternoon will be slightly milder than yesterday and even warmer tomorrow afternoon. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the high in Seoul will climb into freezing mark later on. Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 6 and Busan will reach 8 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 8, while Daejeon and Dokdo both will be getting up to 4. Now, just hang in there one more day. The cold snap will break starting tomorrow afternoon when highs will finally venture into the positives, and it seems like the highs will stay on the positive side for the time being. But that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
And that does it for this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Friday. Until then, goodbye.